Hey, what's going on, everybody? Boilon here, and today we have another special video in Marvel Strike Force. We're joined with us by Gangsta KT here on the channel again. What's going on?
Hey, what's going on, everyone? Thanks for having me again, Boylan. Even heard a little A in the name there, a little gangsta from you, so that's nice. But really excited to talk about this video today, something I've been looking forward to ever since we heard about it.
Yeah, so in today's video, we're going to be talking about Escape from Kyln, aka Tower Mode. Now, some of that has been leaked out, and so this is not, a day one leak or anything like this. We're here to talk about some of the traits, some of the characters that you're going to be wanting to use for this game mode, which, by the way, is a three-person game mode, not the old tower that we're kind of used to. So that part of things are going to be quite a bit different, which I'm excited to talk about here today, right?
Yeah, absolutely. This three-person is new. For the most part, the same best characters that we use now are still going to be best for this, but it's going to be different and have a lot of new theory crafting that's going to be fun.
You ready to go?
Let's do it.
All right, everybody. So if you're ready to go, let's boil this down. Okay, so what I have done is now I've already put together my save squads for some of the sections, and I have a little notepad here, which I'm gonna bring on the screen here, like a really. This is my poor chicken scratch. I know I didn't even bother to do it any fancy. So this is what we know so far: is that basically nodes 1 through 4 are going to be unrestricted, that you're going to be able to use whoever you want. But starting at floor number 5, we're going to be using Guardians or Infinity Watch. Now, this is going to be really important because some people may not have leveled some of these characters, but because it's low on the floors, I think that it's probably not going to be too high power. So that's something.
Yeah, that'll be interesting to see and hope I'm not at a point where I have to power up a really old team just to get through a low floor somewhere, but not
Oh
expecting that.
shit! I screwed that. I screwed that up. Anyways, so I had I had two different versions. I had the Nebula, Nebula and Gamora. I think they probably have to be together. I think there's just too much good synergy there, right? To really, you're absolutely using Gamora. Like in any version of this, you're using Gamora. But I think the Gamora Nebula, especially because Nebula has also the Guardians tag now, which is. I really hated that patch because I thought that they did the Guardians dirty in general because they didn't really rework anyone, but that's a side story, I think.
Yeah,
And
and I agree with you. Gamora, amazing. Definitely need to use her. Nebula with the evades, with the assist. I think she makes sense as well. Um,
so
Curious if Star Lord. Go ahead.
so I have two versions here. I have the Gamora Nebula Cosmo, and then I have Gamora Nebula Phyla Vel. Now, this is because it's no. Oh wait, no, sorry, it's not. Yeah, because Cosmo is Guardians. Yeah, I was getting confused a bit. I was like, wait, there's nowhere. No, so Cosmo is part of that Guardians team, but there's some other variations, right? So you could have Star Lord, Annihilation, because I didn't build Nowhere, so I kind of like forget about these things. So you could use him and Cosmo with like Gamora standalone, and I guess this really depends on what team you invest in or didn't. I guess in this case. So like what three were you thinking of as the best version?
Yeah, so very similar. I think Gamora and Nebula are kind of no brainers at this point. Although we'll see when we see the exact enemies, and if maybe some Moondragon's sustain would be valuable.
That's
But not
true.
expecting
Yeah.
it.
Well, I
But
mean, there are three nodes, and the reason why I brought up Phyla Vel is because she triggers the death proof, which gives everyone the drain, right? Like that's what you need to activate the team's drain, I think, is you have to have death proof on, which I think
yep,
also comes from Phyla Vel, largely.
yep, yeah,
So
that's her passive.
I
So you're
think
right.
with the damage that they have, I think that three duo would probably be fine since it's going to be pretty low on the floors. I don't expect the power levels to be super high, so I think that could be good. I'm actually not, and maybe you know this better than me, because I didn't really use Nowhere a lot. I don't know if Cosmos healing is only to Nowhere, or does it do broader healing? Is it very good? I didn't really race the team much, so
So I think my Nowhere are pretty big. I put a lot in them. I think Cosmo's healing is to everyone, but I'm not positive because I only use Cosmo with the full Nowhere. And that's one thing I'll say. My Nowhere are a lot bigger.
mhm.
So I am curious about Star Lord. I took him to DD6. I have him, T18 level 95, so he may just go in there and knock it all out. So we'll
Yeah.
see.
Well, I'm just wondering for people who didn't level Nowhere, maybe who watched my videos. But if you were just to bring up three characters specifically for this, Who would that be for you?
Specifically for this, I would say right now probably Gamora, Nebula, and Adam Warlock.
Oh yeah, I forgot Infinity Watch. So yeah, if you do have him, I don't know why I skipped out on him. Maybe it's because he's legendary. I wasn't really thinking, but that's a good call. So if people do have him, and especially they made things a little bit easier on the unlock requirements for the other legendaries. I don't think they dropped it for Adam Warlock, but at least to get Jubilee, they made that a lot easier now as well. So that might help too. It'll be pretty interesting. I don't think you can probably need that much power. I just know a lot of newer players that kind of skipped Infinity Watch because they're so old now at this point. So that might be a small issue for some people, I guess. But we'll see about that.
Yeah, and neither Infinity Watch or Nowhere two are great to be investing in at this point, overall for the game. So,
Mhm.
but I do think those recommendations are the one to go with.
Yeah, hopefully it's not too difficult. So, number 8 to 10, we have Avengers, and then we have global skill after. So I kind of have a 2-for-1 here, because I do feel that these are the best Avengers currently that have been reworked or have any value at this point, which is going to be Nick Fury, Black Widow, and Cap. Now we can go back into the tag itself, but really, in terms, and I want to put some special consideration into like newer and mid game players. Like I don't want to tell people that go don't level up your Bionic Avengers because they're useless now, right? Like even though I have Viv at 286k with 2 diamonds. I pulled that, by the way. Like I don't want to go tell them to go and do that. Hulk is probably the only other character on this list that I would consider because there's Avenger synergy with Cap, but also you need to kind of raise them a little bit for Apocalypse. But would you get rid of any of these for Hulk?
So I think it depends. Like at that power level, no, I think this team will have really good sustain. The only thing is this team's kind of speed up, speed manipulation, control, defense. There's not a lot of damage there without
Yeah.
someone like Hawk, based on the older characters.
Not everyone has Black Widow leveled up, so I'll concede that part. I did that myself for Dark Dimension, but not everyone did it. So I think this could be a decent alternative as well because people probably will have Hulk. So at this point, that you could do these three instead. I think the Nick Fury minions actually might do a decent amount of damage because they actually
Yeah.
hit kind of hard, and Nick Fury had a pretty decent rework. So at least there's some value here in using your Nick Fury again here. So I think that it's just the rest of them. They're old teams. I can't really justify, right? Iron Man Infinity War's on there. That's interesting. Actually, I kind of forgot about him. And Thor Infinity War is on there too. So, you could actually take, I forgot, you could actually take advantage of some of your nowhere characters. They would have damage for sure. So if you have nowhere and you want to take advantage of some damage, I forget, right, that I didn't build them. So I kind of forgot they were there. Mockingbird's also on here. Actually, you know what? New Avengers is on here. So I forgot about that too. There's the 3 new Avengers. I did put some into them, but just not a ton. So that could be an option for people who did build a bigger New Avengers because I think that they might that actually is good sustain. Mockingbird heals and Ronan and Tigra. So I think that could be a very good trio there. I think.
Yeah,
I
I
forgot.
agree. Nick Fury, I think, will probably be there on my team. Like, I think he's so good as summons. He can give the speed up if
Mhm.
it's needed for that match. But I have been looking at other characters for the rest, New Avengers and Thor, from nowhere because of the damage, and I do have them maxed out.
I think there's a decent selection here. I think that it shouldn't be too difficult, actually. So even for newer mid game players, there is that new Avengers group, anyways, who are newer characters that you might have invested into. And for veterans, there's obviously a whole slew of characters you could use. You might even be able to use the older characters because I forgot to mention this at the beginning, but your characters. So you just basically go through with when they take their damage, they keep their damage on the next node. So having characters with a sustain is really important, but for some of these sections that have like multiple different teams, you could just chuck whatever you want at them and eventually just get through the node, as long as you have enough build characters to some degree.
Yep. May
So
have to use sacks on nodes, but you're right, it carries through.
yeah, so having sustain is important, but for nodes like this with, a lot of option, I don't think it's going to be that challenging probably. So maybe I spent too much time
These
looking
won't
at
be the
that.
hard ones,
But
probably.
the next one, we have global skill, which is interesting because it's kind of similar actually to a lot of the Avenger choices. We're doubling. I'm already doubling with Nick Fury and Black Widow. Have Bucky Barnes there. I'm just trying to kind of bring it up here again. But a lot of the characters who were also Avengers do get covered in this section as well. So that part's kind of interesting. I think Mockingbird's on there as well, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah.
So
Yep.
you could use Mockingbird instead of Black Widow for extra healing. And if you have her leveled up, it might not actually be that bad. All the invaders are on here, but honestly, I don't know. I think Bucky's damage, right? So I just assumed that he's probably the best one to add in here because there's like basically no damage in here. Um, maybe Iron Fist, but I don't know. What's your thoughts?
Yeah, I think again Fury I think is going to be fairly automatic as much as he brings, and then it's almost going to be what's your biggest other two characters out of a few choices.
Yeah,
Black Widow's not going to be bad. I think Sam's an option for people who have him really big. I know I'm planning on trying to use Taskmaster.
yeah.
The blinds, the stun, he does a ton of damage. So not sure how much I'll carry over for multiple nodes, but a lot of good options there,
It's a bit
or a
of
lot of okay
I
options, I
think the
should say.
options are both better, but also a little bit less than the Avengers section. As far as what other players might have, like non-veterans, I think you're probably looking at Invaders, Nick Fury, and Mockingbird, probably just realistically, like I think like what they might have. That being said, there's some good sustain here with some healing. I think if you do have a high Mockingbird, this might be good for extra sustain throughout the nodes. And my only problem is like I've never really run Mockingbird and Nick Fury together. Would they like clash with their summons and stuff because there's too many people, too many minions on the field? And while they're all shield characters, which is interesting, but they'd eventually start clashing with each other, I guess, when they're trying to summon.
You mentioned a great point. I think the summons, we've been talking about Fury, Mockingbird has them too. And I think summons may be incredibly valuable overall because you're only talking three characters, right? So, like a summon,
Mhm.
instead of going from 5 to 6, you're going from 3 to 4. That's a big difference. Plus, they can eat those big damage attacks. It's RNG if they get attacked, but you
And,
can reset until they do.
And I just thought about this, and this is just a little bit of an aside I wanted to add in. But between Nick Fury, Mockingbird, and Maria Hill, I'm pretty sure they all summoned the entire Shield minion roster. I'm pretty
There
sure
should be a special bonus for
we
that.
get Shield Security and Operative with Nick Fury, we get the Medic and the Assault with Mockingbird, and we get the Troopers with Maria Hill. It's
If
unfortunate that it caps out at 10 because otherwise we could literally have like those three and run like a Shield minion summon team.
if these nodes are easy, I am running that team
Like it's just so
just
many
for fun.
minions, like the whole cast, the whole shield cast right there. Just thought that was funny. Anyways, so that's global skill. Again, I don't think it's going to be super challenging. We're again kind of at the lower floor, so I think like once we hit to the 20s, that's where we're going to see some challenge. So 14 to 16, the City Mystic. Now, I think this one's a no-brainer, but that's just me. I think if you looked at the rest of them, it's like old teams or not as good. I think Gwenpool is a City Mystic character, but I don't know how good she is like outside of Crucible standalone, that kind of thing. Mr. Negative is an option here, but I feel like he's kind of past this point. Like if you hadn't already raised him, it's too late. I wouldn't go back and do it now. And a lot of these are kind of like that too, right? Like I wouldn't go back to level any of these characters really. Maybe Gwenpool, but other than that, like, don't touch any of these really.
Yeah, I agree. They still have unique uses, Mr. Negative and War, Gwenpool, and Crucible. But the three you have, I think, are pretty obvious. I'll say Gwenpool, her special that opens up and flips buffs and debuffs on all enemies, depending on the node and who's there, that could be a really valuable trick
Can she do that
over
outside of
node.
Crucible? I thought that was uh it doesn't hit everyone outside of Crucible. It does a chain, like a regular chain, I think, but does it still clear?
So I'd have to double check.
Yeah.
Fair point. But that was one
Maybe.
thing where I thought she could be valuable still.
I'm not a Gwenpool expert, so that. And this is the one instance where I keep my characters together because if you've noticed in my save squads, I've been putting them away from each other just in case they get hit by adjacent attacks. But Dagger does need that for the offense up. So when you're building your teams for this, make sure you're checking characters for their passes or anything if they have skills with adjacency and that kind of thing. That's kind of important there. You want that offense up on Robbie. So I
That's good advice. Those things will make a difference.
think this is going to be the Robbie
Those
show,
little
though.
details. So
This is going to be the Robbie show for sure. He's like going to roll over everything. So I think if you have a decently built Robbie, I think you should be good to go. And he's fireable now, so that's great.
yes, I know. I really hope
Um,
I get a 7 star by this, but it's gonna be close.
so far, a lot of these aren't really that contentious. Now, as Guardians, I wasn't sure. Like, right, you're going to run Vol and Beta Ray Bill, I think. He's also the tank. I think he's got some good skills. As far as a third goes, like, I don't know. Like I was thinking, I know their healing kind of sucks outside of raids, so I wasn't sure who would have the most third value impact, or maybe we'd just be swapping in and out. I don't know, depending on how hard the nodes are. Somebody dies. Like I don't know. What's your thoughts on that?
So
Could
yeah, I
even run
think there's
Hella.
two people I've considered. So you just said one. I'm definitely planning on bringing Hella as the third, and she may even be the second, if not even the
Yeah,
first. So her summon, Greg again. When we can reset these nodes, you can reset until Greg's killed 4 turns in a row. Your team's getting speed
Yeah,
up. Like that could be
actually,
huge.
what I was thinking of as well is actually because of the ability block from Vol, you could spread that with Hela probably. So that could be really impactful on one node if you save that and time that properly. So that could be really, really good. It's just the other Bifrost characters like Sylvia has some really long cooldowns. So I don't know, maybe you're just bringing her in for one node or something like that and kind of mix and matching. I was just trying to think of the Bifrost team, just like who's the best third on that team. That's all.
Yeah, and I think Team Loki or Sylvie would be about the same depending on the enemies. One thing to consider though, if there's a match where you like really need Vol to get that ability block off quickly, Loki with giving speed to Mystics may be an interesting third as a plug and play on one match. He gives that 15% speed up at the start of match.
I thought it was Mystic Controllers actually, because a lot of people often combine Loki with Cersei.
With Cersei, yeah. And again, I'll be
Is
careful.
it
I'll
all?
double check that.
Well,
I thought
it might
I'm
be,
gonna look it up as we're talking. I
but you're
thought it
right.
was Mystic, but
We can get back to that on the next section. But I think if you have the full Bifrost team as well, and you might happen to have Hela as well, that's 6 characters. So you could have 2 different teams for these 3 nodes. And I think that there'd be good mix and match potential there. Most of us are going to have the full 5 Bifrost anyways, raised to some degree. But of course, I think the 2 staples right here is probably going to have to be Vol and Beta Ray Bill. And then including, maybe depending on what the nodes look like. I think that seems fair.
yeah, and I'll say one other note with this team. Vol's a character I plan to take on the first couple nodes,
Mhm.
just to build up cooldowns.
Oh,
So having her all
that's
available, I
true. You
think,
know
would
what?
be really valuable.
That I think is something that we really didn't really talk about is because there is an unrestricted section on 1 to 4. And I think that would be because it's probably going to be very low power. I think that's probably honestly the best thing is maybe planning out ahead and then any characters who don't start full on their cooldowns, try to bring them in there, take minimal damage, and just build your cooldowns right away and have them all available because I think that should be possible. And I'm actually wondering if that covers charges because there's an X-Men section, and I'm wondering for Cyclops if I could pre-build his his charges for his alt or something.
Interesting. Yeah,
So
I
there's
think it
definitely
would.
a lot of possibility here, and I think that's actually kind of fun to think about because that's a good way to kind of take advantage of those unrestricted early sections. So good call out for that. Okay, Ball and Beta Ray Bill plus some extras. So the next one, there's 2. Oh wait, I should have brought that up, kept that up. So we have Spiderverse tech or skill. It's both. Now, this one's interesting. This can go a lot of different ways because my first thought, honestly, off the top of my head, is Sinister Six. I love Sinister Six. I think they have great sustain as well with Doc Ock. Doc Ock, Green Goblin combined are just an insane duo. And so this is
Insane.
something that honestly I would probably be doing. Alternatively, there is also Black Cat, but I think as far as like a trio goes, I think having another Sinister Six member might be more beneficial in this case, just because of the synergy and all that. Your thoughts?
Yeah, I agree, and almost feel like it'd be a coin toss, and I
Mhm.
think at the levels you have those characters, it probably won't matter. I think either would be
It's
okay.
actually about the same, almost pretty much like my power levels for the team. But just it depends on who I want to use, and it'll depend on in you guys watching. What Sinister Six characters you have leveled up. I still think it's an amazing team. It's like one of my this last batch was like one of my favorites, and I think a lot of the characters with combined with these two are great. Just depends on which characters you've kind of invested into, I think, at this point. So there's quite a few different options here. Even if you don't have Green Goblin, actually, if you have Doc Ock, but you have the other members, I think it could go well too, as well.
Yeah, absolutely. They're going to be the best options, but I do think Doc Ock and Green Goblin separate themselves.
Hmm.
Especially, Doc Ock in this again, that summons a fourth character basically, and
Yeah.
that's a big difference than three. And he's just so survivable. So I think those are solid choices there.
Yeah, I mean, if you don't have, like one character or one Sinister Six character, I think you could definitely add in Black Cat because a lot of people will have her. So if you really need to use her, I think that's fine, probably to use it there as well. Because as long as you have 2 Superior Six members or Doc Ock and one more, when you summon Shocker, Shocker's going to get that text. So the ultimate is going to, reduce the turn bar, which is huge, for probably
Huge.
something like this where it's kind of like Dark Dimension ish and there's a lot of people on the field and it's going to drain all their turn bar. It's almost like a full rewind at that point because it's like 25% times 3, I think, per hit. Like it's crazy.
Yeah. And that's where, again, those are great options. Black Cat's stun trauma may be really, really valuable, needed somewhere. And
Mhm.
then with all the enemies, Vulture is going to be getting speed as they die. So 2 solid
Yeah.
options
I
there.
think if you invest into your Sinister Six, there's more than enough character options or side options for different characters for different nodes to do this. Because I have Vulture for here for one, Mysterio for another, Craven is an option as well. So lots of different characters. Love this team, by the way. If you haven't raised them up, you definitely should, in my opinion.
Agreed,
It's,
they're
it's
amazing.
another Sinister Six advertisement there for you. So moving on, we have Global Mystic. Now, this is the same floors, 23 through 25, but I think some of them are going to be 15 at the start, and then it's going to go up to Gear Tier 16 minimum later on. And I think you wanted to talk about this, something a little bit with the Gear Tier requirements for this, right?
I do, but I'll tell you what, I'll save it for the next one of these that
Okay.
comes up because it is specific to that.
So there is one thing that I want to say here is that for Global Mystic, we do have Darkhold Trio. We have Wong, Agatha, and Morgan Le Fay. Now, the only thing that I want to say about this is that we haven't had Horseman Scourges come back around for quite a while. We also don't have the permanent event structure that they said they were going to give us. So for some players, you might not be able to do this. And actually, I do think that Darkhold's, I think, kind of sucky without Morgan Le Fay. I don't think it really functions without her very well. I mean, I haven't not used her for a while, so I don't know. I'm pretty sure that's accurate. Like she pretty much brings the team for like a lot of things, right?
Yeah, I mean they're an older team now too, so what you said is even more accurate. Like back when they were more in the meta, they had survivability as the 4 piece, but it's all
Mhm.
about Morgan. There's no question.
So if you don't have her, or you haven't had the opportunity, or her star levels are super low, maybe she's a three star. This could be an issue for some people. So I wanted to provide an alternative to that are kind of standalone characters that you might have, which is Quicksilver, Spider Weaver, and Doctor Doom. I think that those were kind of like the best non-team alternative versions of the characters, I think. I want to go back into the trade just really quick in case I missed anyone. Did you, out of those characters, did you see anything differently that maybe
No, and I keep looking on the side, pulled up my list here too as we go through this. But
pretty much?
I think for those who have Morgan,
Yeah.
she's going to be a no-brainer. We saw how valuable she was back in the, I think, Black Cat trials, where she just dominated a few of those nodes. I do think Doom's going to be another really valuable one, another one we can have the alt ready,
Hmm.
turn one if we
Yeah.
need to, and get
Yep.
them prepped. And then similar to the value of minions kind of being more valuable in a 3-person mode versus 5, I think Quicksilver's extra turn is going to be similar. Him getting 2 turns, that's now a 4th turn from your team on the overall round instead of a third. So I could see Quicksilver having a lot of use here as well.
I think also if you haven't really, if you're not geared up Doctor Doom like I have, and you do have Scarlet Witch because you were forced to for Apocalypse, I could actually see Spider Weaver, Quicksilver, and Scarlet Witch, thus getting a second Scarlet Witch later on if Quicksilver gets damaged, because she does kind of heal and distribute her. Like she heals herself, I think Scarlet Witch, and then she distributes everyone else. So there's some healing going on there. So having two of those, especially with the trauma, so Scarlet Witch can extend trauma, which is applied by Spider Weaver. So this could be the stun and trauma combined could be really, really good. So not everyone has Doctor Doom leveled up to the same degree I have yet. So I just wanted to kind of present that as an alternative. Observer Man by himself, I just don't think there's really any value there, in my opinion. But hey, maybe that's just me.
Yeah, unless you need to like eat some big opening hit on a node with his auto taunt, but it's too much with 3 people. You need them all to be contributing. And he's kind of an also ran.
If the enemies are low enough in the first few nodes, even for Quicksilver, you could do the kind of put him into node one, kind of have his ultimate ready if that's necessary too. I think. Although, does he loses his charges though? Is that going to cause any problems in between nodes, or will that does he get on spawn charges? Does it recharge him per node?
I think based on using him in DD6, I think it does recharge him per node that he gets on spawn
Right. Yeah.
charges.
Yeah. Okay. I just wanted to because I just thought about that because some things like charges might carry over, depending on the character. So I just wanted to keep that in mind as well. All right, and so let's talk about villain mutants because that's going to be floors 26 through 28. I don't think that there's a lot of variation here, though, right? I mean, I was going to say that I don't even want to bring it up, but Marauders is villain mutants, but realistically, like I don't want to say that because I don't want to give people the impression they're worth building now because they're not. But yeah, other than that, it's really just the like this grouping. I think it's like Death Seed and like Apocalypse.
So
I think.
yeah, I think so. I do have one other character strongly on my radar for here, but I think for those who don't have Apocalypse yet, that synergy from the 3 Death Seed may be very valuable. An Archangel with giving energy from node to node, or that will carry
Mhm.
over. is a no-brainer. And then obviously Apocalypse you have him, but I definitely plan on using Omega Red here as well.
You know what? I
I
forgot.
know
I forgot. Yeah. So there might be a node where, like, if you charge him early because of his alt, and the turn bar rewind on that. How fast? I don't know how fast Omega Red is. Like, is he going to take his turn before others do? That's a little bit. I think as an older character, he might be a little bit slower than some people now.
he's fairly quick. He goes first on that team usually, but I know there
Okay.
is
Yeah.
speed at start. But then his special with the ability block and trauma also gives him speed up, and so he takes
Right.
that second
Yeah.
turn with that huge alt pretty quickly.
I think this might be another case where, depending on the node and what enemies we're up against, as far as the Death Sea trio goes, like, is this the best one? Like, I think it is, but I don't know. I guess that's probably the three best ones. But maybe if Magneto can blind a bunch of people, there might be value. But like, I feel like the newer characters are probably better, and you probably need them a little bit more. But you kind of want the assist stuff, right, from Dark Beast.
Yep, I think the assist. I think his potential to revive if something happens,
Yeah.
and that's your only chance of saving that character. You can't revive him in between. So I do think that's the best three piece, unless there's a gimmick where Psylocke's buff clear is needed, or like you said, where a bunch of blinds would work.
So what about with Apocalypse? Would you use Apocalypse, Archangel, and Omega Red? Is that what you're kind of talking about? Those three and just dumping Dark Beast?
Yep, that's my plan.
Okay. Yeah. I mean,
Without knowing all the enemies and knowing exactly how I'll play, but that's my plan right now.
I think that realistically, with three nodes, and if you have all of these characters as options, that's great. I think that this is where things might start to get challenging for regular players if you don't have Apocalypse. I'm just thinking that it might be scaled, or it might be the nodes and the levels and the enemies might be kind of done with you, assuming that you have Apocalypse. And I guess that's like we'll see whether or not that's a wall for people. Like, if you don't have Apocalypse, that's it for you. You're done here, right? And that's what I'm kind of thinking.
Yeah, and he's such a match changer on any match he's in. It's almost hard for that to not be the case.
Yeah.
And they have to tune things to him. So
Unlike Dark Dimension, you're going to have to be really careful about using your skills here, though, because you're not going to be able to die and come back and get your full Apocalypse energy. So you'll have to actually, conserve when you use your skills. Unlike every day in Dark Dimension, where you could just blow your ultimate and get your skills back, the next day. That's not going to happen on this mode. So you have to be a bit more conservative and a bit more understanding about, getting your energy back per node, especially if we're carrying over Apocalypse to multiple nodes. Just wanted to raise that really quick, too, in case people forgot.
that's where Archangel will help, right?
Yeah.
With the energy. But you're exactly right. It's going to
Yeah.
be probably the most critical part of those nodes.
So I think that I'm looking forward to it, though. I think it's gonna be a lot of fun. Let's get to your favorite. This is your favorite section. So this is gonna be 29 through 31. Hero Tech G16/17. So I think it's gonna start at 16, upwards to 17. Now I have two variations pretty much, and at the end of the day, it's basically like Pegasus with possibly Big Time Spidey. Like, those are the better characters, I think. And as you can see, I don't have G17 on everyone. So my rescue in Ironheart, is that what you were alluding to?
Oh yeah. So you're nailing it. So one thing I've always tried to do in this game from like min maxing my raid teams when they're big enough to do it, I stop building them. And Pegasus did the raid content I was in
Oh,
at
sorry. Okay.
T15. My Pegasus aren't this big. They're a great team. I fully plan on using them in this section, but now I'm gonna have to put gear on them because of an arbitrary requirement instead of like to get that power I'd want for that gear. So I just get frustrated by that, and I don't know why they just threw these random gear requirements on a few different nodes, but not the end of the world. And I do think Pegasus is the best option. I
Yeah.
just have some work to do before I can use them.
So who do you think is the best third? Because honestly, I haven't manual played them enough to really understand who is the best. I'm assuming we want to keep rescue for the support, the longevity of the node, that kind of thing. That's probably going to be needed. But as far as third, Ironheart, Iron Man, or Darkhawk, I know Darkhawk does good damage, but I think for things like this, you typically want more like in the Dark Dimension scenario, you want more control than just raw damage. And I think a lot of that comes from Ironheart, or am I confused about who does what?
No, I think what you said is fair, and definitely agree with the control. Similar to Dark Dimension, Ironheart has those two stuns on the opening alt, and that is really valuable. And I agree with Rescue. There's maybe not room for a lot of support characters overall in this mode because you only have three tunes, and that's
Yeah.
a big spot. But Rescue is going to be needed here. I had planned on doing Iron Man and Infinity War as my third.
Hmm.
I think the blinds on the vulnerable, getting some extra defense downs out to help Kestrel pings. He does. I think he's the one with that damage passive, which also will make Kestrel's pings bigger. And I do feel like it's going to be the Kestrel show. So
So there's one reason why I did not want to put Iron Man on this list is because his unique is Osmium. And this is very, very tough, especially if we're talking about Gear Tier 17, because now Nightcrawler is Osmium. So I'm not sure if this crossed your mind at all or if you've already done that. But
it
I,
hadn't,
I don't
and
have enough to upgrade him.
I'm putting my Osmium on Nightcrawler, and I will not be taking Iron Man Infinity War. And I had not
So
thought about that, but he's
yeah,
T15, and I don't have
so
the
is mine.
Osmium.
So
So
is mine. So really, that's kind of why my Ironheart's here, because she had a respectable unique that I could actually invest into. I might be able to do Darkhawk, but really it's just between the two of them because there's no, I'm not, he's not going above 15 because I'm still like broke on Osmium. My Nightcrawler's not 18, and I'm not putting him in front of Nightcrawler. So
I did T17 Darkhawk, not probably a mistake, but it was for the last trial for Green Goblin. One of the nodes you could use him on, I was struggling, and he helped a little, but I will take him as my third because he's the only one I have T17.
there is a Spider-Man big time. If you invest heavily into him, you might be able to get some value out of him standalone. Because it really is going to be the Kestrel show, and Spider-Man does actually apply some defense downs on his basics, so there might be some room for that if you're able to squeeze that in, especially because there's going to be 3 nodes, right? So there might be some reason why you might want to do that. So who knows? Maybe I'll get some value out of my T17 that I accidentally clicked the button on. I meant to keep him
I
at
think you
16,
will.
but
I think you will. That's a good point. Mine's not big enough, but I think he's a newer character. If you have him ready for that, I think he'll be valuable there.
and in fact, for veterans, I just wanted to raise this really quickly that you might be able to do, I guess, I don't want to call it a sack thing, but like if you have a trio Bionic Avengers, I think things like Viv, Vision, and maybe Hulkbuster, you might be able to like even get a node down. If you're like me and you have that G16 from the previous raid, you don't really use them anymore, but you might be able to, you might as well just throw them out there anyways because you can soften up some of the nodes to make it a little bit easier for some of these other teams. So you don't have to do 3 full nodes with these just in case it's that hard. So that's an option there too, and maybe even Shuri actually because she heals. So there might be some room for some of these other characters for us veterans who do have them leveled, but I don't go out of your way to build them if you haven't. Is what I'm saying.
And are you going to buy that third diamond on Viv soon?
I did pull this out of an orb. This was, unfortunately, I'm not getting a crazy amount of value out of this. But yeah, I do have a 2 diamond Carnage that I pulled. I'm looking forward to maybe using that
Not
sometime
bad.
soon when Hive Mind kind of gets finished. So let's move on to, we have a few more left. So we have X-Men 32 to 34. Now, I I think Nightcrawler is going to make a huge win here. I think no matter what kind of version that you decide to use. And so I have 2, and maybe you got something similar. I have a Nightcrawler Rogue and Gambit, and then I have Nightcrawler Rogue and Cyclops for those people who I don't know. I was gonna say don't have Rogue, but at this point, I think in your 30 plus, you're definitely gonna have Rogue. I think you're not making it this far without Apocalypse probably. So 2 versions, and I guess it's because Rogue has some good control. I think this might be an instance where you might put in Rogue for 1 node and then use these for other nodes, that kind of thing. Mix and match. We will have Forge as well by this time, but I'm just not sure how valuable some of these characters are outside of the raid, where their main focus is that. But Gambit's very powerful and Nightcrawler's very powerful.
Yeah, I think you nailed this one. I'm planning on the first iteration you show there. I do think you mentioned this earlier. If you can, charge up Cyclops at the beginning and you really need that he's a one-time play.
Mhm.
But I fought a similar team to what you're showing as that 3-piece in Crucible recently with a full Superior 6, and I had to 2-tap it. I could
Mm.
not believe that. But with the rework, Gambit and Nightcrawler are unbelievable and synergize still really well with Rogue. So I think that's going to be the 3-piece right there.
Yeah, I actually won a Cosmic Crucible match by putting them on defense, just because I guess people weren't used to it, and they didn't end up killing all of my team in one go, and that caused me to win my match in Cosmic Crucible. So that was great. And I think for Cyclops, that's something I'm going to do is I'm going to try and build up his charges, whether it's 20 or I think it's mostly 20. Actually, if I use Forge, apparently, and I'm pretty sure it will, if it transfers over in raids, I think it should do in this mode too. I'm hoping that's the case. Guess we'll find out, right? If it does go from node to node, I hope it does. I'll find out pretty quickly on the early nodes. But if you have Forge on the team, Forge can actually give plus 10 charges outside of raid to Cyclops with his ultimate. So I could get him to 30. So that could be a pretty big blast on one of these nodes if we need to.
Yeah.
So looking forward to trying that out. And there's only 2 more. We have 35 to 37. That's legendary. There's a lot of options here, honestly. But I'm still, if my characters are making it this far, I would really love to still use Doc Ock and Green Goblin. And I just think that they're such a powerful duo. They just do so many amazing things. But my biggest concern, obviously, is like, where is my energy by the time I finish the last section? Sorry, which one was that again? The Spiderverse tech or skill. So whether or not I actually have my energy like proper by the time I start this node. And Nova, who I haven't touched at this point, maybe I need to build them up too on those first few nodes so that he can use his ultimate on for the battlefield effect on one of the nodes. That this is going to synergize really well with Sinister Six with the deflex.
Yeah, so I think agree with everything you said except one thing. I think you need to prioritize making sure that their energy's in the right place when you finish those nodes
Mhm.
because we can reset them. I think those nodes are pretty early, and the size of these you have, you're going to be able to get through those easy. So I think you reset until it is in the right place, and if not, you're going to be getting to this point and having to reset. So I think
Yeah.
that'll be important to keep in mind as we come through. But I will say we all have a lot of practice on legendary from the DD6 nodes right now, and I actually was pulling Nova out of my lineup towards the end for people like Omega Red.
Mm.
And so I think with your defects, the battlefield effect, you're probably right, and he may be used there because of sustainability, but not sure if he's going to be my third pick there.
I think he might be someone that you might be able to pull in for one node. I think with the battlefield effect, because I think that his cooldowns are very long. So like, kind of once you use that, he might not be the because I experienced this as well in Dark Dimension that once he blows his cooldowns, you're waiting a while to get it back. So it might be the case of pulling him in for one section or for one node that might be most valuable for that case, and then using some of the other characters, whether it's Omega Red or Red. I think these are the best standalone. I'm thinking based on the previous nodes, Rogue is off the menu because her energy is probably not going to be where I want it to be, for these sections. So we're probably looking at either Red Hulk, who hasn't been used yet, or Morgan Le Fay. I think again, battlefield effect on Red Hulk, at least for one node, I think will be quite valuable. And just Morgan Le Fay is always valuable.
Yep.
If Nick Fury is still kicking, then he can provide some minion cover fire, I suppose, if that's valuable, with his minions, and kind of hiding some of the other characters. Again, I'm kind of thinking like I want to use this 2-piece for all the nodes if I can, because I think it's just super powerful. When I use them together in Dark Dimension 6, it was like cutting through butter, cutting butter with a hot knife. That's what I wanted to say. And so just adding a good third character for different nodes, I think, is probably what I'll end up doing here, hopefully.
Yeah, agreed. And depending on the enemies, do you need the speed rewind that Morgan or Red Hawk would give? I think that could be an important consideration. But agreed,
Yeah.
those are the right characters. I think most people have them fairly big at this point because of the previous trials and DD6 and APOC events. So
And now I don't know
fairly
how
straightforward
many of
choices.
us are getting to this final section because it's villain bio. But what I thought was really interesting about the choices, and you might see this here because it's a very Boilon choice here with Swarm and Electro. Because I was talking to people in my Discord, and like nobody said Swarm and Electro, so there's Super Skull, right? And I think that this is probably just like the Apocalypse section. I think that this is going to be benched at having Super Skull. I think if you don't have Super Skull, I think it's going to be very challenging. That's what I'm assuming because it's like 38 to 40, and that's the top, pretty much. So is that fair to say? I think
Yeah, it's still a guess, but I would assume that's pretty fair to say.
a lot of the
At
other
this point,
options, if
it's
you look
going to
at
be
the
the
options,
hardest
it's
teams.
it's not good, right? Like
Like
there's Moonstone and Titania. I think that's what most people are probably going to gravitate towards because maybe they put a little bit more value in there. You could do US. No, I don't even know why I'm saying that. US Agent and Winter Soldier, but I don't know how good that is. We may by that time have the Hive Mind rework. Possibly, it might be in which case there could be a Carnage and Venom option. But other than that,
that
it's pretty grim.
That is accurate, and they could be on there. I'll say 2 others that I'm looking at and plan to use, is Zombie Juggernaut and Iron Man Zombie.
Oh, you know
They
what?
Zombie
Yeah.
Juggernaut
This
is
is a level
just
one.
so powerful. So might not work at that level, but, I think and then,
Lizard's also on here, but I don't know how good he is standalone. I haven't leveled him quite yet because I'm not really prepared to do this yet because I don't really need him at the moment. But I don't know what kind of value Lizard does have standalone. Also, he's low stars for me, and this event's going right now, and I don't know how high I'm gonna get him, but there is, yeah, that's interesting. Does Iron Man Zombie, are they without Hela though? I've never used them without Hela.
So
So
it's definitely going to be different.
yeah.
Hella brings so much to that team. For instance, Iron Man Zombie won't revive,
Hmm.
and I think most people still have him pretty small. But you know, these enemies attacking themselves if they have bleed, that could be so valuable at these high levels.
I
So
think
it could be a
yeah.
one room trick, and Iron Man Zombie dies and you're done. But I definitely plan on using those two somewhere in here.
That is the biggest problem that I'm thinking about is that this is going to be some of the highest powered nodes at 38 to 40, and there's like basically no sustain. I think for the most part for these characters, there's like no support in any of this, and I don't know if any like Moonstone and Titanium might work for one node. And I think that's what you might end up having to do is that this is designed for people with like maxed out rosters, right? You can pull in Titanium Moonstone for one node, and then you I don't know maybe you pull Swarm and Electro for one node, right? And then maybe you do I don't know Carnage and Venom for another node, right? Like, and you just have to have all of these and have Super Scroll survive for you to beat this. I think that's just like most of us regular people probably aren't making it, but I thought I'd bring it up anyways.
Yeah, and it'll be still fun to try. The options
Yeah,
you mentioned are definitely the best. Your comment about Carnage and Venom's interesting because if that rework is by then
yeah.
and they're pretty powerful, that could be a huge threesome with Scroll.
Well, the reason why I said that too is because you know that if you've played with Carnage, he gets that 30% turn bar when they're low HP, not even dead, but like just red HP. And Super Scroll's huge damage, right? So there's some pretty big potential to just like pop off the symbiotes. And if they're a lot better by then this could be the best version actually of the 3-man team for this because I could see that going really, really well. So I guess we'll have to see about that.
Yeah, that's good advice because I think, you know, trying to think through now that we've gone through these, like, what do I want to do now? What do I start now? What do I want to wait and maybe save and invest in when this comes out? But those are two that if they're going to be ready when this comes out, they're good ones to invest in now
Yeah.
and start
I
getting
mean,
there.
if you have some extra gold and you don't know what to do with your gold right now, if you're in that instance, then you know I did put some. I finished off Carnage and Venom to 95. They're a bit gear expensive, but at least I had the levels on them because I needed to use my gold somewhere, so that's what I ended up doing. Because I know they're going to be a team, and I know I'm going to be using them eventually. Maybe not right now, but I will maybe in a month or so, or less. We'll see.
Yeah. And I actually am in similar state. Never thought I'd say this, but I don't have a lot to spend gold on right now that I need to.
I
Tons I
know,
could,
right? Like
nothing that I
people
need
see
to.
my gold and they're like wondering how I have so much. I'm like, right now I'm at 26 million. I have Nightcrawler at 95. I know this is not super relevant to the video right now, but I just wanted to finish off with this. That I do think that we're in a pretty decent state when it comes to gold, where we might be like in a little while, not so much gold crunched. There very well could be a training mod crunch still, but at least for gold, like I just haven't felt like broke all the time these days, which has
Oh
been
yeah,
nice.
huge change.
So yeah, really happy with that. Otherwise, final thoughts on Kyln? Are you? I'm looking forward to this. I kind of hope it's more than a one-time thing though, like because I do like the idea of this 3-man thing, and maybe they'll just like revamp the trades and things like that. That would be fun. But I hope that we get it more than once because so far with Tower, it's really just been like one, sword satellite, right? And then now we're moving on to Kyln. So
Yeah. I'll tell you overall, this is the most excited I've been for a new game mode since probably Crucible. And it's because of that three-man dynamic and that just being different. So I'm really looking forward to this. You know, maybe hope to make some content when we know the
yeah.
teams and it comes out with some more detailed plans. But I think what we covered today is definitely where I'm sitting right now and how the right way to prepare for it.
Yeah, and I think the great thing about this mode too, when it comes out, is that you're basically, as far as I'm aware, you're gonna be able to play it basically as much as you want. Like you can reset your run if you're at like node 30. You can like if you want, you can like redo your run. Maybe somebody died or whatever, and then you can go back through and try to beat your run or do better the next time. And so really, it just comes down to your time. You can do it when you want, as far as I'm aware, because characters don't heal every day like they did in the old tower mode, where you use that tower for that team for the day and then you'd wait, right? And so this time you can kind of just do everything when you want to do it and play as much as you want as well, which will be great for streamers and content creators to be able to put out footage like this and talk about the strategies of each floor. So I think there's a lot of good stuff here.
Absolutely. Really excited for it. It's going to be fun.
All right, everybody. I think we've kind of touched over all the teams. Let me know in the comments down below, though, if you think there's anything that we missed, any characters that we should have thought about. Otherwise, of course, I'm sure there'll be more conversation about this as it gets closer to the time, as things become a little bit more official, and when we get an actual date for when this is going to happen. But I do expect it to be probably about early to mid-January. I think that's kind of where I'm thinking it's going to happen. So
Yeah, agreed, and excited to see what comments you get. Your fans leave a lot of comments. It's fun reading through those, and curious if we did miss something, if there's a better option out there. So
And of course, I want to thank you for coming on with me here to talk about this today. And for everyone else, I'm going to have his links in the description down below so that you can click on those and maybe give Gangsta KT a couple of more subscribers as we climb up to 1,000 for him. I'm sure he'd appreciate that.
well, I do appreciate that, Boylan. And again, you have a great fan base, and have seen some comments of people mentioning they saw me here. So thank you for having me, and always a pleasure to talk through this.
And that's going to be everything for today. So until next time, everybody, stay safe and healthy. And I'll see you all later. Boilon signing out.